All right, everybody, I want to introduce you to Candice Colucci. She is an attorney and she does own Club Prana. A lot of y'all might be familiar with it if you are familiar with Ybor City. She's going to be talking about what a lot of y'all need to be aware of. A lot of y'all want to go in business, but you definitely need to understand the potential legal ramifications. Candice, if you don't mind, please tell people who you are and what should they be considerate of when it comes to getting into this franchise world.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm attorney Candice Colucci. And so I do, over my career, I've done a lot of contract law. So I think that it's good that you understand like kind of what are some of the things that will potentially be in place in a franchising agreement. I also think it helps you as when you're developing, if you're going to get into the franchise industry, if you've got one that you're already thinking about doing now, or you're going to get into somebody else's, that you already kind of know in your head even before you see a lawyer, like these are the things that I should be looking into, and these are the things I should be fashioning my business model out of, or I should be getting into a business model that offers these things. So just to kind of jump into some of them, we'll see. There we go. Okay, so contract. It is so important that anything you do in your life that you have a contract in place before it all goes wrong, right? And you want to think about all the worst case scenarios that could happen. That is what you do. When people get into a relationship with someone, their friend, their family, they always go, oh, I'm good friends with this person. It's not going to go wrong. Like, oh, we were able to do this and this. We were able to plan a vacation together. We definitely can go into business together. Let me tell you, even your family members, it should be very clear of what are everybody's duties, roles, and responsibilities in a contract before you start. And your assumption should always be, assume every single thing is gonna go wrong. That's what you should always be thinking before you start something. So some of the things that you're looking at when you're doing the franchise agreement is you're making sure you have the grant of the franchise rights, that you're talking about what does this mean as far as your trademark marks. Have you created the trademarks? Are they created or not? Are you going to have a trademark? Do you have a copyright? Do you have a trademark? And what are you granting to this other person, or what is being granted to you? What is your rights around this trademark? What are the term and renewals of that contract? That is huge. How long is the contract for? And how does the contract renew? Is it an automatic renewal? Do you have to give notice when you're renewing it? What are those things? What is the territory and exclusivity? That is huge when it comes to the franchise agreements. What type of exclusivity do you have to that area? Can they sell it to somebody else? Do you have first right of refusal in that area? That is huge. You want to assume in your head that this franchise is going to go huge. It's going to be so big. It's going to be as successful as you want it to be. And you don't want to be limited in a certain area, but you also don't want there to be ability that somebody else can just come in and get another location that's really close to you. What is the location? What does it look like? How far out do you have that territory right for? What's the radius around how far out your location is, and how close can they put another location? I mean, you look at something like McDonald's that are on every single corner, well, that's their agreement. Their agreement is, hey, we'll give you a location here, but make no mistake, we also have the right to always put another McDonald's within this radius of your place. And that's something that you want to know going into a business. I want to know how close can the next location be if this does take off. Fees and royalties, obviously that's something you guys are seeing. What is the way that's going to be? What are you okay with if you're going to franchise it out, or are you going into a franchise agreement? What's the way that you're going to get paid, or the way that you're paying somebody else? Training and support is huge too. What's the model? Because I'm giving you guys kind of two kind of ideas. Are you creating a business that you're going to franchise, or are you getting into a franchise? So you want to know what's the training and support. What are they going to be offering you? If you're getting into a franchise, what are they saying to you? Because we were just talking the other day about one of the franchise agreements that I was working with a client on was a newer, I guess I'm going to use a name, but it's a newer business. It's one of those workout fads. And they said, listen, we just want a flat fee each month. Like, that's all we want. And everybody saw that as like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, oh, that's fantastic. They're not taking a percentage of my money. Well, guess what that also means? They're not vested in the ultimate success of your business. So they're not putting anything in, and they're not taking a huge percentage of your business, because really, guess what? When I did all the math and did all of the numbers, it really looked to me like their only real game was they wanted you to invest initially, get the $450,000 loan from the SBA and buy all of their equipment. They had patented all of the machines and you had to buy them. So to me, the model looked like it was a quick grab by the franchisee owners to get people involved, to make money quick upfront, and they didn't care about the ultimate success. So that company that actually is a great model, there's no advertising. They're not putting money behind advertising. So when you first look at those numbers and you go, oh man, they're taking a huge percentage of my money, but what are they offering you for it? Right? So we were talking about something like not always going back to like McDonald's, but we're going back to saying, listen, every third commercial is a McDonald's commercial. So you have a guaranteed of success, even though they're taking a huge percentage. So like the model for McDonald's are, you're gonna make a lot if you have a lot of them, right? So you really have to kind of look at those things and analyze them from all the perspectives and not just go look at something and go, okay, this isn't gonna work for me, but what's the consequences, what's the benefits of potentially that model? Quality and control. If you're getting into a franchisees, how are they controlling you? What are their matrix of success? Are they watching you? And do you have something that you have to live up to expectations for? And if you're creating a model for somebody else, is that something that you want? Absolutely. You have to have good quality control. If you've built something, this is your idea, you want to make sure that everybody going forward, down to the pins they use. I happen to be insanely OCD. Come to my office, there are certain pins that everybody needs to use. And if I go to the conference room, my pet peeve, I've always been since I was young, is all different types of mismatching pins. Throw them away, put them in the trash can. Literally. And my mother, who's my office manager for all of my locations, she will get a pin for every single free place you've ever been to and put them all. She's like, they're all free. They're all free. They're missing caps. They all have different company names on it. My nightmare. So what is the quality control that you want to make sure that you have? Or if you're getting into somebody else's franchise, what's their quality control? And are you okay with those kind of things?
So it seems like what you're saying is, even if it's a great business model, don't worry about what they're saying orally. Make sure what they're saying orally is matched in the contract. And even if it's a profitable, great business model, make sure you like the owners and whatever their OCD is. Because in order to have a successful company, usually the owners have a certain OCD. Make sure their OCD matches your OCD.
Yes, yeah, your OCD matches their OCD. It's a good way to say it, because absolutely. But making sure everything's in writing. So just a little note so you guys can understand this, because people don't get this at all. The way a contract works is that when everything goes wrong, everything has to be in the four corners of all of those pages. So when you see like 100 pages and you're like, this is crazy, you want as many pages as possible. You want everything defined, because when it all goes wrong and people come to me and they go, well, he said this, she said this, there's an email for this. Let me tell you what that works like with law. In law, when there's a contract, the contract is the only thing that's allowed to come into the courtroom, is the four corners of that document. And so when you start saying, well, we talked about this and we added this and we said that, every time there's a new agreement, after you sign the initial one, you have to make an addendum to that contract where it means somebody else puts it in writing, and you literally write on the top of the document that this addendum is altering the original contract that was signed on this date, and here's our new agreement. Other than that, think about it in your head, nothing else is allowed to come into court. So think about that in your life, like that people don't think about something as simple as that. That's why every single thing has to be in that document.
Yeah, and you told me about that. I believe it's referred to as the parole evidence rule.
Yes.
An oral agreement is just as strong as a written agreement, but once the agreement gets put into writing, then that written agreement cannot be changed without another written agreement. And I think in addition to what you said, it might seem intuitively like a good idea to have a flat rate. Just like it might seem intuitively, guess what? I got into this franchise and I didn't even have to sign anything. You know, we might think initially that that's a great thing, but...
Yeah, or people like, it was only just one page. Like, it was a couple pages long. They're like, oh, this was fantastic. I understood what was being said. No, it's a trap. It's a trap. Question, please, questions. We love questions.
In regards to everything being written out, what
Yeah.
happens when an FDD has a typo? For example, this company sends me an FDD that
Yep.
I signed. They raise the franchise fee by $5,000. So the first part where they mention the franchise fee says $50,000, but two other places down the contract you still have the $45,000. So what
So that,
And just to repeat the question for
Yep.
the people, what happens when the franchise agreement, the FDD, the franchise disclosure document, has a typo?
yes. So there's very, very, very rare instances where a court, when it's argued like that, will allow something to come in. But you want to know what's really crazy about inconsistencies in a contract? So when a contract says one thing and then it actually says another thing, it actually, those two things get crossed out as if they were never in there. So you actually have a contract now that has no amount on it. And so now, since it becomes this term that becomes, it's a term that you have to have, is what price is. You have to have, what's one of the elements you have to have in a contract. If you guys went and argued it, that's one of the few times that they would allow testimony in of what it was supposed to be. Like anything else that would help define that essential term, which would have been price in. So that's why it's really crazy. You got to make sure you watch those things, because any type of inconsistencies in a contract are read as if they cross each other out and as if they never existed in the contract ever. Yeah, it's a scary concept. Yep.
Oh yeah, and typically, and once again, all of this stuff I've learned from Candice, and at one time or another, a lot of times you have the drafting party, right? Any ambiguity is typically found in favor of the non-drafting party, but then you have those contracts that said this was a mutually drafted agreement, and then eliminating that ambiguity. So once again, the longer the contract, even though intuitively it would seem like that's a bad idea, you want every possible scenario to be laid out.
Yep, absolutely. Liability. Viability is super, super important. That was another attorney who was talking about. We got 5 minutes. Another attorney was talking about what is the liability situation. So if you have a franchise and you're creating it, you want to make sure that there's zero liability for you. You want to make sure that you're requiring anybody else takes a franchise that they have their own insurance. There's an indemnification agreement, which means, listen, at the end of the day, if we get sued, you have to pay us. Because the way that it works is that people can sue whoever they want. So if you have a franchise and you get super successful and there's a bunch of different locations and someone goes to sue one of the locations, they're suing the whole name. So it could potentially bring in everybody. So your indemnification agreement says, listen, if I get brought into this, you franchisee owner, if this is your location that gets in trouble, you're agreeing that you're going to take over this litigation and you're going to litigate it. And if you don't, and I'm forced to do it, you then owe me all of my legal fees and any type of judgment that gets put against me. So you want to make sure that that language is in there. And now if you're going into a company and you're going into a franchise, you want to make sure you understand what that liability is. You want to make sure, are there certain things, like if they're the ones doing advertising, right? So let's say they are the ones advertising and you're buying into a franchise. And then you have liability language that says that you're responsible for all the liability lawsuits on advertising. Well, that's not, you don't want that. If they're the ones doing the advertising, I shouldn't have to take the liability for any type of advertising that ends up being wrong, like unfair advertising, any kind of misinformation in the advertising, over-promising, any of those kind of things. So it's really important you understand from each of those perspectives, buying into a franchise or the fact that you're creating one, is where is that liability actually lying at? The legal dispute resolutions, this is huge for me. This here is, I'm always like, what does it say? What does it talk about when everything goes wrong, right? I'm telling you from the very beginning, assume everything's going to go wrong. This is going to end up in litigation, is everything in this contract. But what's going to happen? One of the best things you always want to have is making sure that you have a requirement that there's a mediation first. That's a great thing to require, that you don't just get sued, that there's a notice requirement, that there's a mediation. We're all going to try to work this together. We're going to get a mediator and we're going to try to sit down to see if we can come to an agreement. And if we can't come to an agreement, then you need to make the decision. Do you want to require arbitration or litigation? Some of them say, listen, we don't ever want to go to litigation, and we just want to arbitrate. And arbitrate is a quasi version where you can't file a lawsuit. You have to file an arbitration kind of petition with this kind of semi-quasi company where there's like judges that are supposed to be overseeing it. I'm a friend of litigation. I'm a litigation attorney. It's what I specialize in. But arbitration is potentially a lot cheaper, but the law is better in litigation. Arbitration is like monkey court. It is. Depending on who ends up showing up as your arbitrator, crazy things have happened. When in litigation, they have to follow the law. They have to follow the law. I can argue it. I can file an appeal if it all goes wrong. I'm a jury trial specialist, so I would rather go to a jury trial. But you may decide I don't. I'd rather it always be on an arbitration basis. And where's the governing law at? That is huge. If it all goes wrong, where is the agreement that I have to litigate? I have had people sign agreements in Florida that their arbitration clause is in California, which means they're not paying attention that if it all goes wrong, guess who they have to do? They have to hire an attorney in California, in a city they don't live in. They have to fly to there for all of the hearings, and now they've been at a disadvantage. The last thing I'll make sure you guys know is, sure most of you guys have heard, but the FTC has now determined that non-competes are not allowed in contracts, but there are specific requirements that allow them. There's certain times that they're allowed, but in general, they are not allowed at all, these non-compete agreements. So if you're doing an agreement, you got to make sure you don't have a non-compete agreement that is in violation of the law. And now you guys know that after you guys, it's going to change the whole entire landscape, but non-compete agreements are not in place. The one last thing I will say is making sure non-disclosure agreements are huge. If you're going to start pitching your ideas to people, be careful who you're talking to, and making sure you understand what a non-disclosure agreements are, that you have those in places. Because if you sit down with someone, you give somebody your idea and you have no non-disclosure agreement in it, it's gone. Gone, gone, gone. It's very, very difficult to ever get it back. Yes? Federal. This is federal.
Federal Trade Commission just banned non-competes. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. You know, it forces leaders to be better leaders, and it allows people who have better ways of doing things to increase competition. Hey, that last slide, just so y'all know, I am the co-chair of the African American Franchise Council. We are specifically helping African American families and business entrepreneurs get access to funding. Candice will be joining the African American Franchise Council, so if that's somebody you want to have access to, please reach out to Candice Colucci. One moment, and this is how, please take a picture of this screen. This is how you can get in touch with Candice Colucci. Candice, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me. And guys, dream big, go for it. You get one life. I'm like, it's great that you guys are here getting the education you need. This is where you start and where you should grow, but just do it.